stagecoaches to drive through, but it still survives. It was an awesome thrill to drive our own station wagon right between the living sides of this 26-foot-long tree tunnel. A California mule deer greeted us here in the Mariposa Grove as if wanting to make us welcome in this towering tree-shaded part of Yosemite's natural wonderland. The next morning we had a chance to refresh ourselves in one of the most unusual swimming holes we had ever seen. Over thousands of years, a rushing stream had flown through a rocky riverbed and worn down the stones to make smooth, rounded pools and even a perfectly shaped natural water slide, which we all enjoyed coasting down with the current, each in our own way. When we were about to leave the southern part of the park here, we almost thought we had lost Daniel, because when he went into the opening in the side of this monstrous tree trunk, it was David who came out. Going further north in Yosemite, we had the awe-inspiring experience of driving through this long rock tunnel and coming out at the end to view this absolutely magnificent vista of Yosemite Valley, one of the most spectacular panoramic scenic sights in all the world. What was originally a V-shaped river valley had been turned by successive glaciers over millions of years into a U-shaped trough with sheer granite walls, peaks, and domes on all sides. El Capitan was on our left, and in the distance we could see Half Dome with its rounded top 7 miles down the valley. On the right were the rugged cathedral rocks, from which in the springtime Bridal Veil Falls leap precipitously down to the meadow below. The colossal El Capitan is the largest exposed granite monolith in the world, rising straight up more than 3,000 feet from its base and more than twice the size of Gibraltar. From our lucky campsite, right in the middle of the valley, we looked up in awe at the great cliffs towering thousands of feet above us, with picturesque waterfalls cascading down their steep sides. The next day, we drove up the winding road to Glacier Point on Sentinel Dome, from which we looked down thousands of feet to the valley floor and across to the supremely beautiful Upper and Lower Yosemite Falls, with a combined drop of over 2,000 feet. Someplace down in those wooded glens were our tent and trailer, along with hundreds of other campers. From here we could get a closer view of the awesome Half Dome, like a gigantic marble split right through the middle, straight down for nearly a mile to the floor below. This view inspired us to want sometime to actually get to the top. There's a trail around the back side of it, so you can hike there. And later, years later, David and Daniel returned to Yosemite and with their dad did hike to the summit of Half Dome for a tremendous experience. Back at our campground, we encountered another bear, but again it was not one that was apparently dangerous, just scrounging for scraps in the trash barrels. Of course, it's strictly forbidden to feed any animals, and the rangers keep close tabs on their wildlife. But having a bear around did add to the interest and excitement of staying there. When we reached the great coastal city of San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge was shrouded in fog, but we drove across it to a campground on the north side of the bay, and the next day we crossed back to tour this fascinating city. After smelling the fresh fish at Fisherman's Wharf, we all went for a ride on one of the famous cable cars, which, since 1873, have carried passengers up the steep streets of this fabulous city built on hills. The cable cars are pulled along by gripping a continuously moving underground cable going at the rate of 12 miles per hour. San Francisco's Chinatown was said to be the largest Chinese colony outside of China, and we stopped to eat a delicious Oriental meal here, using chopsticks for the first time. When our cable car reached the top of Nob Hill, we were rewarded with a beautiful view of the world's longest single-span suspension bridge, the Golden Gate. On our way south, along the coast from San Francisco, we photographed the famous seaside cypress tree on the picturesque 17-mile drive around the Monterey Peninsula. Further along, we found a place where there was a public park with a beach. So this is where we went for our 1961 swim in the Pacific Ocean. It was still cold, but we did enjoy the gentle surf here. Near Los Angeles, we spent a day of wonder at Marineland of the Pacific. The main attractions here were not fish, but marine mammals, like this California sea lion, which seemed to enjoy diving off this high platform with other sea lions applauding his performance. There also was a trained bottlenose dolphin, which they had taught to play baseball. A man batted the ball into the water. The dolphin grabbed the ball in his mouth and tossed it back to shore, and the batter was out. On the upper deck, they had a giant saltwater tank where for the first time we were able to see live whales right up close. At that time, back in 1961, Marineland had 2 black pilot whales, the first in history to have been captured alive in the ocean and brought ashore for display. It was amazing to see the smaller one, a 14-foot female named Bubbles, leap into the air over a hanging horizontal bar, imitating a breaching behavior often observed in the wild, from which Bubbles had been taken in 1957. Keeping the whales company in this tank were some high-leaping Pacific white-sided dolphins, also captured live and trained to perform with rewards of food. The biggest attraction at Marineland, however, was an 18-foot male weighing 3,000 pounds, whom they had named Bimbo. Pilot whales are toothed whales with a single blowhole on the top of their heads. They are relatively small compared to the 60-foot sperm whale and giant baleen whales like the 100-foot blue whale, but you can see how large Bimbo was compared to his human trainer as he propels himself up out of the water to return this dumbbell. Wow! Then our 3 children had the exciting experience of being chosen to go out and stand on that platform while Bimbo took their picture. What he did was to jump out of the water and grab a large cork tied to a rope that was attached to a camera, and by pulling it down, he snapped the picture. That was a never-to-be-forgotten moment. And here is the actual photo taken by a whale showing Bimbo at the time that he pulled the rope down, with Daniel, David, and Mary standing right next to him. The biggest fun of all this summer, though, was the day we spent in Disneyland, Walt Disney's original Magic Kingdom in Anaheim, California, just south of Los Angeles. We spent 15.5 hours there, from 8:30 in the morning right up to midnight, at what is known as the happiest place on earth. We had been there 5 years earlier, in 1956, when Daniel had won that contest, but this time it was even more fantabulous, to use Mary's apt description. We enjoyed all the old rides like the Santa Fe and Disneyland Railroad circling the park, past the various sites including the waterfall at Cascade Mountain, the realistic wild animals in the painted desert, and the pirate ship hidden in a cove. In Frontierland, we paddled big Indian canoes and rode the raft across to Tom Sawyer's Island with its rock and roll water barrel bridge. By this time, Disney had added a new landmark, the towering snow-capped Matterhorn Mountain, with a hole in the middle of it for the Skyway cable cars to pass through. Another new attraction was the monorail, a pioneering new system of mass transportation linking the older realms of Adventureland and Fantasyland with the futuristic wonders of Tomorrowland. These electrically powered trains running on elevated concrete beamways, highways in the sky, really were fun to ride in, with their broad windows giving an overhead view of all the activities down below, including the watery lagoon where a fleet of specially designed passenger submarines now took visitors on exciting underwater voyages. Of course, we all wanted to experience this unique water world adventure. Once having descended into the hull and having the hatch closed, each passenger sits in front of an individual porthole, so you can look out at gorgeous underwater gardens, coral reefs, and exotic, brightly colored fish. In actuality, the submarine is never totally submerged, but as it moves rapidly along, you really feel like you are in the ocean depths. This was a ride we went on more than once. Over at the Matterhorn, an exact scale replica of the famous Swiss mountain peak, we saw a couple of real-life climbers rappelling down the side with ropes and giant leaps. This led us to the ride which, for Robbins and the 3 children, was the most fun of all, the Matterhorn bobsled run. We could scarcely contain our excitement as we raced over to the entrance gate to wait our turn in line to board the twin-seated bobsleds, which